Geese are more important than you think, but in order to know why, you must first know what a goose actually is. I've said it before, the Egyptian goose is no true goose, and is more closely related to ducks, especially shell ducks, as is also the case with the Orinoco goose. Not a true goose at all, but by far the worst offender is the magpie goose, perhaps the furthest thing you can get from a goose. At least if you're talking in terms of the anseriforms. Well, except for the screamers, but no one calls them geese. From the diminutive ringed teal to the notorious Canada goose and big yet beautiful mute swan, all are more closely related to each other than they are to the magpie goose. From what I can tell, there's at least 14 species of goose in the name, but they're not actually true geese, most of which are closer to shell ducks, but a lot of them aren't even that closely related to each other, with goose being used more as a descriptor for a long-necked, long-legged duck of medium size, not goose. So how many true geese are there actually, and how many do you think you could name? I assume the two that would come to mind first would be the Canada goose and the grey-lag goose. And if you had to pick between losing one human or all of the geese in the world, which would you choose? What's the real answer? Get it? Geese? Answer? Speaking of answer, that gets me nicely onto the 17 species of true geese, of the genuses Branta and Anser. But one of these is not like the others. Go away, you ridiculous ratite. Silly Struthio. Problematic paleognath. Guilty ostrich. Could you tell that the emperor goose was missing? It's also very possible there's several species of extinct geese, such as the Meydum geese, but we're mainly focusing on the present day impact, so we won't be looking at the extinct species. Let's briefly meet every true goose before we get onto their importance. Our first species is the Brent goose, or the Brant goose. These geese are interesting because they spend much of their time around the coast, and even swim in the sea, feeding on vegetation such as seaweed, congregating in large flocks. The next species is the adorable red-breasted goose. Alongside the Brent, this is another small goose species. These geese are fascinating because they choose to make their nests around bird of prey nests, as large birds of prey offer protection from mammalian predators when they are guarding their own nests. Sadly, this goose species is in decline and has been listed as vulnerable, due to hunting and habitat fragmentation. On some of the islands of Hawaii, there lives a goose, which has the primary ecological role of a grazer, because Hawaii has no native mammalian grazers. They are only one of 3 waterfowl species on the islands. Their evolution is also truly fascinating. They are thought to be a direct descendant of the Canada goose. The feet of the Hawaiian goose are only semi-webbed for walking over rough larval terrain. At one point there was only 30 left in the wild, but thanks to conservation efforts their population has increased quite a lot. Now for the goose with perhaps the worst reputation. The burnt goose of Canada is quite often seen being very aggressive. But I have to say, for all the times I've encountered them, I've never found them to be actually that aggressive. Yes, they can be loud, and yes, of course I've seen the videos of them attacking people, but I've never personally encountered this. Yet. They are a very successful species and have been introduced to several Old World countries. The cackling goose is similar in general colour to the Canada goose, but is significantly smaller. At one point they were even thought to be the same, until further genetic studies revealed that they were both separate species. The burnt goose with a white face is perhaps most famous for its nesting habits, where upon hatching young have to jump from high cliffs before they can even fly. They are also well known for historically being believed to have come from barnacle trees made up of goose barnacles that produce barnacle geese. The emperor is another coastal goose. They eat possibly the most amount of animal matter of all of the geese, especially in winter, when they consume large amounts of bivalve mollusks. But in the summer they mainly eat vegetation. The Ross's goose is possibly one of, if not the smallest species. Another quite positively adorable goose, with their small beaks and their round bodies. The grey-lag goose is a goose, and is a very traditional goose in my opinion. They're pretty easy to find here in the UK, but be warned, they can be quite hissy. Though generally speaking again, I found them to be pretty chill. The grey-lag is arguably one of the most important geese for humans, as they are the ancestors of most domestic geese. However, while the wild grey-lag goose population is stable, many domestic goose breeds are in decline, mainly due to a change in farming practices within the past few decades. There's about a dozen recognised domestic grey-lag breeds here in the UK, but bear in mind these are all the same species. The grey-lag is also well known for hybridising with several other goose species, especially the Canada goose. Snow geese are very intriguing, as they are a polymorphic species that naturally occurs in 2 plumage colours, the more common standard white form and the blue form. also known as blue-phased snow geese. And while they are rarer, they are still the same species. There's some evidence to suggest that the two colour forms were geographically separated, but due to habitat change, the two colours now mix and interbreed. They are quite a bit larger than the Ross's goose, but strangely the Ross's goose can also occur in a dark colour form, in a very similar way to snow geese, but it's much rarer. We will be revisiting the snow geese later in this video, but now it's bar-headed goose time. These birds are the highest flying goose species, having been recorded flying at heights of 8,000 metres. This makes them possibly the third or fourth highest flying bird in the world. They have several adaptations to their cardiopulmonary system, which allows them to get enough oxygen for their high flights. The swan goose is a goose, but is not a swan. These are another species of goose that have been domesticated. The bird pictured is most likely a domestic breed known as the Chinese goose, with the wild type being similar in colour to the grey-lag goose. While there are only 2 recognised breeds of swan goose here in the UK, there are several other hybrid swan goose breeds. Wild swan geese are listed as endangered. However, their domesticated counterparts have been introduced to several areas outside their native range. While some still classify bean geese as one species, most now recognise them as separate. The tundra is the higher latitude breeding of the 2 species, and is generally smaller with a shorter beak and neck. Similar to other geese, the bill has 2 flight projections. The lesser white-fronted goose is obviously named after its white front, and its binomial name means red-footed. Crazy. In all seriousness, it is named after the white patch on its face, although I would call its legs more of a orange colour. They are smaller than greater white-fronteds, and have a very obvious yellow ring around their eyes. Whilst currently considered vulnerable, there are ongoing conservation efforts. The aptly named pink-footed goose was also considered to be synonymous with bean geese at one point in time, though pink feet are not solely unique to this answer. Grey-lag. Wait a second. The mallard, their binomial name meaning broad-billed. Boom! Their binomial name meaning short-billed. Boom! The bean goose gets its name from foraging in bean fields. This species' specific name is derived from the Latin word for broad bean. The tiger is significantly rarer than the tundra bean goose. However, the IUCN still lists them as the same species, which is least concern. The greater white-fronted goose easily has the best binomial name of the bunch. A goose with a white forehead. This species may hold the record for the longest living wild goose. However, sources differ, with some stating that the oldest individual is 25 years old, others saying 42, and even one saying 47. So why are geese actually important? I've broken it down into 6 major categories: domestication, consumption, predation, investigation, migration, and incomprehensible information. Most of which are interlinked, and I've already briefly covered some of it as well, so I'll try not to repeat myself. There's evidence to suggest that some greylag and swan geese have been domesticated for at least 3,000 years, although some estimates state that they could have been domesticated for 7,000 years. Domestic geese are used as a food source, with both their meat and eggs being consumed. However, geese are much more than just a food source. They are also used as guards, as geese are very quick to sound the alarm whenever something's out of the ordinary, as loud honking quickly alerts to any intruders. But domestic geese are also used as ornamental fowl, with breeds like the Sebastopol being used in exhibitions, and as decorative garden birds. The potential of geese as companions should not be understated. Geese can and have been used to keep weeds and grasses trimmed, within orchards, gardens and small holdings, which is much more sustainable and natural than many other practices. This feeding style is also very beneficial in the natural environment, as huge flocks of geese can quite easily trample and graze large areas. They also spread seeds by eating and secreting them later, which also helps to fertilise the land. As I previously mentioned, this is especially important in the case of the Hawaiian goose, and so geese pretty much all over the world alter plant communities, which benefits other species, such as ground nesting birds and other smaller grazing waterfowl. Geese also occasionally eat invertebrates, which helps to keep their populations regulated. As geese feed in the water, they inevitably end up bringing aquatic nutrients to land. For example, the emperor goose consumes oceanic bivalves and brings some of their nutrients to terrestrial ecosystems, either through droppings or predation. As of course, geese are a very important food source for many animals, because even though adult geese may not have many predators, their eggs and chicks are taken by many animals, including foxes, raccoons, skunks, opossums, gulls, corvids, snapping turtles, cats, herons and fish, to name a few. With goose nesting sites bringing an abundance of food for most local predators, Adult birds are also taken by bears, coyotes, wolves, eagles, and crocodilians. And even those that don't get hunted are scavenged or naturally broken down, returning key nutrients back to the environment. But without understanding geese and their role in the food web, we could easily miss important information, which calls for investigation. Geese make up an important part of some studies, and in the field research, which can be applied to protecting and conserving other species. The more research that is done, the deeper our understanding of interlinked systems and species becomes. That's right, geese give people jobs and knowledge. Where would a goose conservationist be without geese? The anatomy of a goose can also be quite interesting, especially those high-flying, strong, bar-headed geese with their special hemoglobin. One of the biggest areas of research, and possibly of impact, in terms of goose ecology is their migrations. Many of these birds cover huge distances to get to their breeding and feeding areas, and in doing so they transfer nutrients to different ecosystems and habitats. The sheer amount of geese can correspond to quite a huge biomass. It can be quite hard to grasp just how many geese make up a migrating flock, unless you see them in person. I've linked an amazing documentary in the description, which shows the crazy numbers of snow geese that migrate across the USA. It's quite an old documentary, and some parts are probably outdated, but I still think it's well worth a watch. And if you want the shorter version, I've also linked just the music video, which I definitely recommend giving a watch, especially if you're still not convinced about the grace of geese. Moving from one area to another allows ecosystems to regenerate, and means that plants have a chance to grow back with the assistance of goose fertilizer. I must also say that I'm not a true, proper, real-deal ornithologist, so there's some bits that I've probably missed out. And while I'd like to say I've made a strong case for geese, the truth is that there's still much that we don't know. There's a lot of incomprehensible information. Now this might sound a bit silly, but let me explain. My taxonomy lecturer used to say, "We don't know what we don't know." At the time, I thought it was a bit of a throwaway statement that didn't really mean much, but I soon came to realise it's so true. Think about all of the stuff that humans didn't know about 200 years ago. They had pretty much no idea what we would have done, at least for most things, especially in regards to genetic studies, technologies, species behaviours, ecosystem roles, and even in terms of the species we would discover. 200 years ago, people had only just started naming dinosaurs, and the term dinosaur didn't even really exist. The theory of evolution in terms of natural selection hadn't even been made yet, and even simple things to us like genetic inheritance hadn't really even been proven yet, or at least not widely publicised. I haven't even covered all the separate subspecies of these geese, mostly because there's a lot of them and it's still not entirely clear which ones are valid at the moment. For example, up until 2004 there was believed to be 11 subspecies of Canada goose, but since cackling geese have been made their own species, there's now believed to be 7. However, Canada goose subspecies are rarely brought up in literature and media and are not yet classified as separate by the IUCN. All of this is to say, how much more will we know in 200 years' time? How much stuff that we have no idea even exists at the moment will we know about? How differently will we see geese? We may not even know just how important they really are. So I say, geese, fly high and free. And for any of those who still want to get rid of the believed to be roughly over 35 million geese, and potentially see ecosystems collapse and the knock-on effect of extinctions, just know that if ecosystems did eventually recover, shell ducks would gladly take the place of geese.